Coming to you live on a Tuesday. We've been doing this for well over a year now. And now, even with COVID-19, we're just kind of transitioning and doing it from home. But we want to maintain that contact with the people that follow Project Cold Case, our families that have loved ones that have cold and unsolved cases. So today I'm joined by our great friend, and current board member, Lorena Inclan. And let's see if we can get there. We are. Hey, Lorena, how are you?
Hey, Ryan. So good to see you,
You
even though it's through
too.
this medium.
I know. I mean, we finally figured out a way to get you back on here, even though we couldn't be in the same room
Yes,
together. So
I know. I've used our Facebook Lives over at the office.
I
So,
know we've
but
been.
hey, this is a good close second.
This is, and we,
Yeah.
we have been keeping in touch. I don't want people to think that
Yeah.
just because
Yeah. We
I've
have.
been checking up on you. You've been checking up on me and my family, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was
Yeah.
staying safe. You are what we would consider on the front lines of this thing. You don't get to stay home during COVID-19 and
Mhm.
stay secure from other people. You have to be out there
Mhm.
reporting. The people need to know what's going on, and you have a very important role in providing that information. So you've been on my mind, on a lot of people's
Mhm.
minds, wanting to make
Thank
sure that
you.
you were safe and that you were, cautiously giving us the information that we all needed.
Mhm. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, news media is considered essential. So that's why, you see us out there and we're trying to stay as safe as possible. Hats off though to the nurses and the doctors and the first responders who are really in the thick of it, and we're reporting on everything that they're doing and everything. But yeah, I'm home today because I'm off, but otherwise I I would be in the field trying to bring you as much information as I can, doing news conferences and everything. But
Yeah.
I really, you know what, Ryan, I've always known that my profession is extremely important, but it's times like these that information can literally save a life.
Yeah.
And I believe that wholeheartedly. So.
I agree, and I
Mhm.
know some people have kind of bashed the media a little bit and tried to utilize you guys as a scapegoat for whatever their fears are. But quite honestly, without you
Mhm.
guys, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't know that there was something dangerous out there. We wouldn't know how to protect ourselves. We wouldn't know. I mean, even things like your station doing the businesses that are essential, that
Yeah.
are open, that can advertise your station. Action News Jax is allowing these like free advertisements for local businesses to try to
Mhm.
keep them, keep the doors open. And,
Right.
you know,
Because
and,
we live here too.
yeah,
We're members of the community. We all are worried just like you guys, and we all have our fears. My family's in South Florida,
yeah,
in
where it's really,
Miami-Dade County, where
yeah,
it's yeah. And my mom is an essential worker too. She works at BJ's Wholesale Club, and she lives with my two grandparents. So she is the caretaker for two
so,
elderly people,
yeah,
and she still has to go out and work at a grocery store warehouse essentially. So I'm worried about her too. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's not about us, but I say that to say I have the same worries as you guys have.
yeah.
So we're just out here trying to do as best as we can.
Well, and I like to take the opportunity to remind people that it's real easy to blame the media for things, but the media didn't, stop schools. The media didn't shut down
Mhm.
restaurants. The media didn't shut down the beach. I mean, you're reporting on the things that are
That's
happening in
right.
our world, and I,
Absolutely.
for
Thank
one,
you.
am very appreciative of what you do and what you and your family sacrifice. And I hope others. I always want others to recognize and understand that whether it's a hurricane, violence, a mass casualty situation, a pandemic, you guys are running towards that, whatever that tragedy is and that trauma
Mhm.
is, to report on it. And so you do an important job. And I think people that have cold cases recognize that, because without you, a lot of these cases would never be talked about again, would never be heard about again. But then also in a situation like we're experiencing right now, You know, like you are our eyes and ears, and you know, and that voice. So I thank you,
I
and I know
appreciate that.
a lot of others thank you, and your husband who runs a business
Mhm.
here in town, and
Yeah.
a business that has, I'm sure, been deeply impacted. You know, one of the things
Mhm.
that he did, which I thought was just one of the coolest things I had seen anybody do, was he offered, you know, and it's Mambo's Cuban Cafe for anybody that wants to go by and order some food. But he did sponsored lunches for first responders, for medical professionals, and for journalists, and you could, you know, for very, very affordable. I know he wasn't making a lot of money off of those meals, but you could sponsor a meal, and he would deliver them, you know, to whichever, and you got to choose which group you wanted to send your meals to.
Yeah, it was thanks to the generosity of people like you and others in the community who really stepped up, and you know, he's not the only business to offer this service too. He's one of many who are doing that, and it's just so awesome to see his small business and others really stepping up, and just, and also too, it's twofold, because you support the small business, and then you also support the people on the front lines. So it was such a great idea for businesses to do that, and I think hopefully it'll continue on.
Yeah, I definitely hope so.
Mhm.
And I wish him, and, you know, and everybody there that's working, and, you know,
Thank
that's
you.
wondering, you know, how long they can hold on, or when people will be able to come back in, you know, you know, we're praying for them too, and hoping for the best. And I guess
Thank
as of
you.
today, technically 25% capacity was allowed in. I don't know. How did they handle that? Do you?
As of yesterday,
Yeah.
yeah, we actually, since I was off today, earlier today, I went to the beaches, and we did go to a restaurant, and it seemed to be very, very smooth. There weren't that many people inside, and but my husband's handling it just like all the other restaurants too. They're trying to keep everybody socially distant,
Yeah.
blocking off certain tables. We interviewed a restaurant last week at Action News Jax, who they showed us what they were doing as well. So they're just, you know, everybody's just trying to be as creative as possible, trying to let people know that they're staying safe, and they're going to keep you safe too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's great. And, you know, we got a case that we we want to get
Yes.
into and talk about, but it's been so long since we got to see each
I
other
know.
and
We're
share.
catching up. We're catching up
Yeah,
too.
we're catching up. We're doing it live. I see Joey has chimed in and said hello to us. Leslie
Hey.
McRae's cousin, one of the cases that, you know, we've been lucky enough to get on
Hey,
your
Joey.
station, and to get some publicity for, after a really, really,
Mhm.
really long time. And so, you know, again, when I talk about the media and how important it is, you know, Leslie's case is 34 and a half years old now, you know, or around there. And it hadn't been talked about in the media and in the public. It had only been talked about within that family. And that was another one that we were able to, you know, to connect you to the
Mhm.
family and get the story back out there. And which is similar to,
So thankful for that. Yeah.
yeah. And it
Mhm.
really just, to me, just shows how important, you know, what you do, and what your station has provided to Project Cold Case, the ability to share these stories and share these families with the community, and people that have, you know, unfortunately have really started to feel that nobody cares anymore. You know, the public has moved on. I mean, the neighbors have moved on, the news has moved on, the police have moved on, and we're, you know, we're proving and showing them that we haven't moved on, that we do care, you know.
That's the one thing, Brian, that always gets to me, because I hear that from every family pretty much, that they feel like they're the only ones fighting. And to be able even have a segment for them, and I wish it could be a longer segment, but how news works, you know, we're only able to give a couple minutes or so. But even those couple of minutes to them, I mean, if you can imagine, I know you can imagine, it means so much, you know.
Yeah,
To
yeah,
have it out there, and then to have it on Google, like we've been talking about as well.
yeah,
You just
yeah.
Google them and it comes up.
Again, yeah,
Yeah.
like and Leslie Ann with the case we're going to talk about, Joseph Bellamy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people think of 2001 case, which is the Joseph Bellamy case of 2001, that like, oh, that's, in this millennium, and it's, and I mean, social
Mm-hmm.
media, I don't know, social media exists, maybe Facebook at schools, but like news, the internet, those kinds of things existed. But if you Google them, there really isn't anything there, I mean, even in
And that's
2001.
frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're
Mm-hmm.
doing a service that honestly, when we started doing this with you and with, our website and Facebook page, we didn't even realize we were doing it. And that was just creating, archiving this information online so that we could, so that people could Google it, so that
That's
somebody,
true. A family pointed it out to us because we were like, oh, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Chad Livernash just chimed in, and his sister Tina Hines. That was another case that
Yep.
that you did some work on, and so this is why
Yep.
we do this, and this is why we feel it's important. This is why obviously families feel it's important. They're chiming in, and saying hi, and so, it's exciting stuff. I do want to get, because, even we're on these, you know, separate, channels here coming together to
Yeah.
do stuff. We both have other responsibilities. We're not doing the noon one anymore, which sometimes feels like we have all day,
Yeah. I know, it's true. It's true. But this
evening.
is a good time too. I feel like, now with more people at home.
Yeah, I think more people are watching, which is obviously good. We're catching
Yeah.
people that aren't at work, but then we all have other things to take care of too, like dinner.
Yeah.
So we
That's right.
touched on it, Lorena, but today we were going to
Mhm.
talk about Joseph Bellamy,
Yes.
18 years old. He's shot and killed in his
Mhm.
apartment in 2001 here in Jacksonville. You did a story on it over a year ago now,
Mhm.
last January, and I'm going to try to play that. So
Okay,
bear
let's see.
with me, and let's see if we can get
Let's
this.
see. Let's see if Clint taught you well.
Yeah, we're going to find out here very soon. All right, let's see.
An 18-year-old man shot and killed in his home, and despite witnesses, his murder remains unsolved nearly 2 decades later. In an Action News Jax partnership with the local nonprofit Project Cold Case, Lorena Inclan spoke to the victim's mother about the case and her hope to finally get answers.
Meet 18-year-old Joseph Bellamy, yet another face of the mounting backlog of unsolved murders in Jacksonville. He was shot and killed on January 6, 2001, while he was in his apartment on California Avenue near 103rd Street. His mom, Susan Parrish, never forgot the words from the doctor at the hospital.
He said, I'm sorry to say there wasn't nothing he could do.
The apartment complex where it happened, right here behind me, has since changed its name. Susan tells me her son was shot multiple times, including in the neck area. He died at the hospital, and she says when she got there, she couldn't bring herself to seeing him in that state. Susan admits her son did get involved with the wrong crowd. The motive for the killing remains unclear. Witnesses reported seeing 2 suspects running away, but the eyewitness accounts have been unable to help police make an arrest. For Susan, these past 18 years have been marked with intense sadness and even 2 attempts to end her own life.
In such a despair, knowing that you're not going to hear him come to the door.
Today, she says it's her faith that keeps her going, along with her family and her other son. Over the years, she tells me she has learned to forgive, but that does not mean she will stop searching for answers. Lorena Inclan, CBS 47 Action News Jax.
Let's see here. There we go. All right.
Hey.
I think everybody was able to hear that and see that. I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, there's one other thing I wanted to show, and we do try to take pictures when you come into our office and do an interview, and kind of we'll share them on Twitter sometimes or Instagram. It's not usually a Facebook post that we do, but it's kind of a behind the scenes. I mean, sometimes we get so focused on just an interview as an interview, and you're sitting there, and it's not like that. I mean, you come in, you meet these families before the camera ever is turned on.
Yep.
You have a conversation. You kind of start to build some rapport. You have a cameraman there that is always compassionate and understanding and, appreciative of people allowing him in to film, this. And it's, sometimes there's almost always there's these moments, where it's powerful and it's behind the scenes and nobody ever sees it, whether it's the moment you introduce yourself and it's real for them that somebody cares enough to put it on TV, or whatever it is. In this particular interview, Susan, Joseph's mom, you guys sit down, and it's funny to watch that video back and see there's not a picture on a wall in our entire building during that interview. And same with our little mini studio that we have back at the office. But there's this moment where everything is set up and you're sitting across the table from Susan, and you're literally about to start filming, and she asks if we can stop and say a little prayer. And it happened. I don't want to take credit for this picture because I don't remember if I took it or if Clint took it, but one of us happened to be standing there, and it just really, really was. Let me see here what I got. All right, let's see.
Yeah. And ML Mancy Kelly, my photog, he was also in prayer. He had his eyes closed as well.
He had lowered his head and closed his eyes, and it just I don't know, it was that moment, and we just happened to catch it, and we seem to have those moments with every family that you interview, and so again, I don't have Clint sitting next to me with our whole stockpile of images, that we usually have. I was able to share a video in that photo. If there was one thing I wanted to be able to share besides the segment, it was that photo and kind of that capture of that moment where, a loved one is really, truly appreciative and just wants to take, in a moment where a lot of people are anxious about being interviewed or going on camera, and maybe they're worried what they're saying, or they want to start because they want to start talking. They want to start telling you.
Right.
When
Exactly.
Susan wanted to stop, and she asked permission, would it be okay if we said a little prayer beforehand? That just was really, really touching moment. And
it was, and I of course agreed right away. I mean, I start and end my days with prayer. So it's important, and not something that I talk about a lot. But it's, I am a believer, so I'm proud of that. And it was really nice of her to ask. That. And of course I wasn't going to say no. Right. And I know Mancy, photojournalist as well. He's also has faith, and that was just a really nice moment. And to me, it was I said it in the story that her faith is what keeps her going. It's evident from the beginning that when we met, she wanted to pray, and you can tell that is what lifts her in times of despair. I mean, she tried to end her life twice. And twice. And it's devastating, but she latched onto prayer, and she latched onto the things that do indeed make her happy, like her other son. She's living for her other son and her family. So it's hard.
It really was, and I enjoy being able to share that moment with people that maybe don't think about what an interview is like, or what never would have considered that Susan would have had that moment with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right then. And, so it was very touching. It was very compelling. It's resonated in our office ever since. And, that was, like I said, the first photograph, I was like, oh gosh, I gotta go back through and find this photo and then share it tonight. And,
Yes.
the story,
Thank you.
yeah, the story was told in your segment, but there still has not been an arrest in that case. It's 2001, so and it was in January of 2001, so it's 19 years old and over 19 years ago now.
Yep.
And I was thinking about this the other day. He was 18, so he's now been gone longer than he was here.
Yep.
And you talk about something that adds a layer of complexity to grief, is like when you kind of reach that moment where it's like, oh my gosh, my life has been without them as long or longer than it was with them. And it's just it complicates things. It makes it harder.
Does it give you a sense of guilt, or like what's the feeling that comes about knowing that you have now been with them longer?
I mean, with my personal case, I haven't gotten there yet. It's only been 10 years since my dad was killed, and I was 31 when he was killed. So I've got 21 more years to go before I pass that point. But it happened with my grandfather, who was extremely close with, like this year. Like I was 21 when he died, and now I'm 42, and I've now reached that point where he's been been gone longer than he was in my life, and it's been this weird kind of thing, because I think, like, you would think that because now you've had more time without them, that somehow that lessens it and makes it easier, but it doesn't, and you're still stuck kind of thinking about it. Like, how could this be that long? Like I can picture it like it was yesterday, I still have that hurt, that pain, and that void in my heart. And so I think that it's hard to kind of logically understand that somebody that was with you for X number of years had been gone longer than that still has that much impact on your life, I guess is the best way to kind of describe it. But they still have that kind of impact,
At that point, do you fear that, like, I don't know if you've heard from the survivors that go to your group as well, like, do you fear that you might forget what their voice sounds like, or that saying that they used to love?
That's a good, like, we should have that as an actual topic in one of our support meetings for the families, because I know that that happened to me this year at the 10-year anniversary. Like I really felt like I was starting to forget what my dad sounded like, and he had a very infectious and unique laugh, and I was starting to to kind of like struggle to remember what was that like. And I still don't feel like I can hear it, but I feel like I can remember that it was unique and stuff. And so and I think especially for a mom that's lost one of her children, that's as complicated a grief as you could possibly deal with. And I think
unnatural.
And every little thing that you add on top of that just complicates it and makes it harder, and it makes that journey to kind of feel any kind of normalcy, it just makes it that much harder, and that struggle that much longer. And in this case with Joseph, and you already hit on it, like there were witnesses,
there were witnesses,
and
meaning more than one witness.
He had roommates that were in the apartment, and and obviously we weren't there, we don't know what happened, and we don't speculate on that kind of stuff, but that is the kind of thing that you hope that somebody maybe they held something back then, 19 years ago. Maybe they were just like, I'm scared of that person, and I do know their last name, or I do know where they lived at the time. I do know what car they were driving, but I was too scared to say it back then, because obviously they just walked in and killed somebody I know.
It's got to be traumatizing for them after all these years. I mean, because it happened right in front of them.
Yeah.
And their friend died right in front of them, or
exactly.
their roommate.
And now, but so let's fast forward 19 years, over 19 years. Like maybe one of them is in a place where they're, if they do have that,
that's the hope,
that thought, maybe they'll come
right.
forward. And I see Marsha Parrish, as commenting as we're talking, and that's one of Joseph's relatives and family members, and she's saying, wish they would talk. It's just not trying to imply that they know who did this or that they withheld information, but that's a very traumatic event, and there may have been something that they didn't think was important or that they didn't remember until later that they may not think is important, and it actually is important, because as we know from talking to detectives all the time, they are not going to give everything. So we don't know most times what they know and don't know. And if they're searching for something and somebody has that information, it's hard to know that that's the piece they're looking for.
The witnesses, Ryan, in this case, because I know that you know all the intricacies of like what detectives look for and things like that. Should we encourage witnesses from back then who feel comfortable coming forward now, even if they don't know who it was? Is it helpful for them to reach out to the police department, the sheriff's office, and say, hey, I was a witness of this crime. I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit more about it, some details that I might remember. Is that?
Absolutely. Couple of reasons why. 19 years later, these are new detectives. They're not the same investigators that were there. Not that the ones that were there were bad, but maybe that different set of eyes, and maybe 19 years of hopefully dealing with the trauma of having people come into your home and murder one of your friends or family members. Hopefully that process of dealing with that situation does clarify some things. Maybe now things are a little clearer. Maybe you remember some small stupid detail, whether it's a tattoo or a scar or a car or a name that was mentioned, during everything. And I absolutely believe that. I think that if we could get people that were witnesses to any kind of homicide, unsolved homicide, to just reach out to law enforcement and kind of say, hey, look, at the time I was traumatized, quite honestly, it's hard not to. At the time I was traumatized. It's been 19 years. You're a new detective. I would be more than willing to come sit with you and go through what I remember. And maybe there's something I left out back then on accident or whatever.
Or just review the day and just, get my statement again after 19 years.
Here's my updated contact information. So
or the update at the very least.
Yeah, at the very least. Hey, if anything ever breaks on this case, this is where I live now. This is my phone number. That was my friend. That was my roommate. That was my, whatever it was. Like I'll do anything. I'll come meet. I'll come sit. I'll come talk. And
Right.
So I think that's something that we should remind people is that that new detectives typically, a case that's almost 20 years old, cases that are 30 years old, like they're new detectives that are going to look at things with their own eyes, and it might be a little different perspective, and there may be something that was not and look, people make mistakes. We're all human. So if an eyewitness said something that maybe just the person writing it down didn't take the note correctly or wrote sloppy. I mean, it could be anything, you know what I mean? And that's the piece that's missing. I mean, I don't want to point fingers and say, that an eyewitness is to blame or that the original detective is to blame. But if we're really serious about solving these cases, then everybody involved should be willing to come meet back up and circle back and be like, what do you need from me?
Absolutely. And just, just reach out and find out. I know that we encourage family members to reach out to the investigating agency to get updates.
Right.
But I realized that we hadn't, at least I hadn't asked, what about, if there was a witness or something that wants to And maybe a lot of times we hear, well, the witness might think, well, I don't know who the person was. I mean, what kind of information can I provide? You'd be surprised. And maybe the detective will ask you a question that you didn't think that you didn't think about, that gets you thinking, like, oh, I do remember that detail. It was this, the car was this color or whatever, you know?
I remember, well, we had a similar case that we did a story on, you did a story on that we helped with in the George Schwender case with the hat, but another case, a separate case where like they had a hat at the scene, but they had no idea who the hat belonged to. Did it belong to the victim? Did it belong to the suspect? Did it belong to a witness? Did it belong, at the time, nobody knew who that hat belonged to. And then years later, somebody came forward, one of the witnesses was, they ran DNA on the hat and they got a match, and they were trying to figure out how this person was involved. And one of the old eyewitnesses, was like, yeah, well, I know that the guy was wearing X hat, you know what I mean, when I saw him running or whatever, and that hat was found at the scene. So, you know what I mean? Like, again, yeah, like sometimes people don't realize that like a piece of evidence still has to be connected to the actual suspect. Like, how do we know that that's not Joseph's shirt or wallet or hat? You know what I mean? Unless an eyewitness or a family member says, oh no, that's not his hat. I know that's not his hat. He didn't like the Mets, or, whatever the situation. There's so many little,
exactly. And detectives will be so grateful for you to clarify that for them. And because they want nothing more than to put the stamp cleared on that case. Exactly. Because as we mentioned, there's such a backlog, especially in Jacksonville, of unsolved cases. So if they are able to clarify a case, get it solved, that's what they want. That's what we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody joining us, now we were talking about Joseph Bellamy that was murdered here in Jacksonville in January 2001. 18 years old at the time, was in his apartment. He had roommates in the apartment where he was shot and killed. And Lorena did a story with Action News Jax in January of last year to try to get the story back out there, because it just hadn't been back out there in a really long time. And so we did that. But there's kind of that one thing that we can't control, and that is how many people are watching at the moment that segment airs. You know what I mean?
That's why it's so helpful to do this.
You share it on social media. We share it on social media. The family shares it on social media. But if it doesn't find the right person, we don't want that to just go away. We don't want that to be like, oh, okay, well, we tried 18 years later, moving on. So we do this. We have these Facebook Lives where we connect again and we talk about
bring it up,
cases and how important they are, and that there's a family out there that is really, really struggling with these answers. They don't care that it's been 19 years. It doesn't make that pain any less because it's been 19 years. The idea that if we all just pretend it didn't happen, or that, it doesn't exist, then everything will go back to normal. The family doesn't have that option. They never get to go back to normal. And
that's right.
They desperately need the answers. And, it's been so long since we've done this, Lorena. I'm going to mess up the Crime Stoppers number. Is it 866?
866-845-TIPS. That's how many times I've said it that I have it ingrained.
I thought I had it, but I didn't want to mess it up. But it's 866-845-TIPS. And with Crime Stoppers, you can remain anonymous. You will remain anonymous. And there will be a $3,000 reward if your tip leads to an arrest. In the Joseph Bellamy case, or in any unsolved murder in Jacksonville. So Northeast Florida, First Coast Crime Stoppers. Crime Stoppers is a national organization. So basically any crime anywhere that's happened, you can use Crime Stoppers to get a reward.
And you've heard Ryan and I talk about how it is definitely anonymous. I mean, we could probably do a whole Facebook Live on that, but long story short, the call centers in Canada, they assign you a number. It's completely anonymous.
Yeah, they don't want to know your name, because quite honestly, that's what helps when it goes to court. Is if Crime Stoppers knows your name, you know what I mean, then there's potential there that they could be subpoenaed to testify on who provided the information. But They don't have
Exactly.
that
And,
information.
they needed to be anonymous for people to come forward. Otherwise, that defeats the purpose. So it really is anonymous. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but it is anonymous. I will never get tired of saying it.
I know.
But Ryan, you know what? If I can oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, finish. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to sort of reiterate like the area where Joseph Bellamy was killed, and to give people an idea. And I mean, you heard it on the video, but so it was on California Avenue. That's near 103rd Street, to give you an idea.
Yeah.
And this crime happened on January 6, 2001. So if you know anybody who lived in that area at the time, still lives in that area at the time, if you're one of those people, you remember anything, no matter how small the detail is, let the detectives on the case decide if it's a small detail or not. You don't decide that. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
let them take care of that, and go ahead and call.
And so there was obviously the roommates that were there in the apartment, but it also in the story says that witnesses reported seeing two suspects running away. So why that is important is because now you can have corroborating witnesses that are not connected. So whoever was inside that apartment is saying, this is what they looked like. And then whoever's outside of that apartment is saying, this is what they looked like. And then you have two independent witnesses describing the same person. But what we don't have is a name of that person, and so that's where those witnesses can be so helpful again, now 19 years later.
Yeah. If it's weighing heavy on you, just go ahead and call. I mean, you won't lose anything by calling and just being like, hey, I was a witness to that crime, or I used to live there. I'd like to give my statement.
Yeah.
So, and I remember also, Ryan, too, that Susan, just days earlier before the crime happened where her son was killed, she had gone to the funeral of a friend's son. And she remembered that it was, I was at that funeral where she was mourning the loss of her friend's son, that she, you start thinking about how fragile life is. And she called her son, Joseph, to tell him how much she loved him. And that was one of the final conversations that they had. And that was so just, that struck me, just so happens that a few days earlier she was at a friend's funeral, and now she is having to bury her own son. No. Never knowing that could be her, in that situation.
Right. Yeah. It's, we did get to spend some time with Susan that day, and I've spent some time with her, outside of that day as well. And you can, I mean, this, you see the hurt in these families, and I mean, you see what it has done to them. It's not fair, what happens to these families when their loved one is murdered, and then when it goes years and years and years without any kind of answer, resolution, and you really do start to think like nobody cares, that my loved one was murdered, and we just, we don't want you to feel like that. We don't want anybody to feel like that. We want every life is valuable. Every life has meaning, and every life, every victim has somebody that cared about them and loves them and misses them. And, it's just,
and the fact of the matter is that the people who did this could do it to somebody else.
Right.
And it should, that's not right.
Yeah.
And if you know something,
you feel like, when you're telling these stories and you're sharing, and there's always that fleeting moment where people are like, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. But then they get to go back to their lives, what I mean, without that loss and without that grief. And so, and sometimes, people think, well, that's horrible, but it only happens to one demographic or on one side of town or on one layer of poverty, and they want to create a false sense of security because what can't happen to me because I don't fit into what this category that I believe is the only people that are affected by murder and violence. And
that's not the way to look at it at all.
No,
because
not at all.
Crime does not discriminate.
Right.
And it could happen to anyone.
It can.
And this person, the people who did this could very well be involved in other crimes as well after Joseph's crime.
Yeah.
And if you know something that could have stopped them and that could stop them, then come forward.
I often wonder how many of our unsolved murders in Jacksonville would have been prevented by somebody,
Yep.
you know, coming forward at the time of a previous murder.
I wonder that too.
You
I wonder
know,
that too. And you know, a lot of times we see like at least like the big cases that make it onto the media and have big trials and stuff. Like how many times have we seen, you know, in I guess the cases you could call serial killers or whatever, that somebody may have known something that could have stopped that person and all these other people wouldn't have died, you know, and they didn't come forward. And it's heartbreaking, you know?
it is.
So
It is.
just you know, just come forward and say something. And you know what? I know I think about this too. Like I can imagine the fear that somebody might have knowing that if they come forward, will they be targeted?
Right. Sure.
And I get that. I get that too.
That is a
But
legitimate
it's
fear,
just
but
absolutely.
yeah.
But
You know,
if it's weighing heavy on you, just make that call. You don't even have to say your name. Just make that call to the Crime Stoppers. That's why the Crime Stoppers numbers exist, so that for people who are very fearful of being found out or being targeted, go ahead and call that number. Nobody will know who you are.
absolutely. So again, just kind of in closing here, you know, Joseph Bellamy, 18 years old, shot and killed in his own apartment in January 2001. The case is still unsolved. No arrests have been made. We met with the family. Lorena did a story last January, a year ago, a little over a year ago now, trying to get this story back into the public eye and get people to come forward if they have any information. And as we kind of discussed today, just lucked into, like, if you have information and you spoke to authorities back then, maybe give them another call. There's new detectives on this case. They might have a different perspective. There might have been something that didn't make it into the report 19 years ago. There may be something that was forgotten back then that you remembered since then. So if
give them your cell phone number and update your information.
Update your contact information so that if anybody is arrested, that the authorities have the people in place can know how to reach out to you, and hopefully again, for Susan and Marcia, for Joseph's family, friends, he's not forgotten. He will not be forgotten as long as we're around, as long as we have anything to say about it. We will continue to push his information and his case out there publicly in any way that we can figure out how to do, until there's some kind of resolution. If there ever is, we will not forget, and we will make sure that we do our part as what I really consider as just being a member of this community, Jacksonville, the city that we live in, the city that I was born in, the city that I love. I am going to do whatever I can, and our organization is going to do whatever we can. And with Lorena's help, we're going to get these cases out there. And, we may not be able to make the arrest. We may not be able to prosecute. We may not be able to do all of that other stuff, but we can do this, and we will continue to do that. So, Lorena,
information is power. So
it is. Information is power.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for everything. Absolutely.
Well,
thank you for everything you do for families and for cold cases, and for everybody watching. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And Lorena, I mean, it really is so important what you do and what you provide for these families and for us. It's important, and quite honestly, I don't know how we would get the information out there without you. So I hope that
it's an honor.
Appreciated. Tell Raul I said hi, and
will do.
What he's
Say
doing.
hi to Val for me.
I will.
And the kids.
And, we will see you soon. One last time, Crime Stoppers number
866-845-TIPS.
Please call if you have any information. If you were a witness, if you were interviewed by police 19 years ago, call JSO 630-0500 and touch base with them and see if maybe maybe you can provide some updated contact information and make sure that everything you remember is in their report, so that that could help as well. So to all of Joseph's family and friends, we're thinking about you guys. We know it's been another year in January, and but he's not forgotten, and we're gonna keep doing what we do to try to help. So thank you, Lorena. Let's get together again. We'll see how things go, whether next time we'll be sitting side by side with masks on, or whether
I know. Oh, I hope we can all have a sense of normalcy soon, hopefully.
Well, everybody stay safe. Thank you for watching. We'll be in touch soon. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Lorena.
Thank you, Ryan.